Hi everyone, it's Kat. Thank you for joining me today. I decided after re-recording just the sun salutations that I posted as part of a longer video last week that I wanted to re-record the standing series as well, just so I could actually demonstrate for you a modification of the standing series and also give a little bit better instruction of crow. So let's get going. So what I'm going to do as I show the standing series is I'm going to do the modified version on one side and then the full expression of the standing series on the other side, just for the sake of time. But know that you can either just do the modification, or you can just do the standing, or if you wanted to do one round of the modified and then one round of the full standing, that can be an option however you would like to do your practice. So to start off with the modified version, you're going to come down and you can either come from standing, stepping forward with your right foot and then dropping your left knee down, or you can just start right down on your mat, especially if you're coming from some seated stretches. Again, bringing that right foot forward and making sure to position your left knee a little bit behind your hip, because you're going to be leaning forward, and in order to get enough of a stretch to the hip flexor, you need to create a little more space. So you might frame that front foot as you shift the left knee back and then come back up, right? And think about, as we discussed when we were standing, lifting the hip bone up towards the lower part of the rib. So you'll engage your abdominals as you do that. And you should also feel a little more of a stretch through that hip flexor muscle. And then from here, you want to bring your hands in front of your heart or lift them all the way up to the sky if that feels comfortable, reaching through the fingers towards the sky and relaxing the shoulders. And then just gently starting to shift your weight forward, increasing the stretch along that hip flexor muscle. Then we'll just stay here for a couple rounds of breath. And then on your next inhale, you're coming back upright and you're just going to rotate. So we're going to come into a modified warrior two. So you're thinking about just rotating around on your knee if that feels okay. Or you can kind of bend forward and lift up if that's not comfortable. You may want to position your knee again a little bit further back. You don't want it directly under your hip, and you may need to create more space, especially if you have long legs like I do. You're thinking about the toes of the front foot still pointing out across the front of the mat. You're bending into that front knee, making sure that it's not collapsing in. So you may just need to guide it with your hands. Keeping your hands at heart center if that's more comfortable, or reaching your fingers so that they're pointing in opposite directions and stretching away from one another. And then just sinking into that front knee as you gaze out over the fingers of the front hand. And then on your next inhale, just coming back upright and bringing your knees both under your hips. And now from here, we're going to shift into child's pose. So you're going to think about shifting your hips back towards your heels as far as they'll go. If they don't touch completely, that's okay. And you can always, if you'd like, grab a blanket or a block to put under here to support yourself if you need a little more space. Another option is you can always bring your knees wider. And this is good if you're pregnant or have a nice round belly, because then it just gives you a little more space. So just a couple options for modifications. And then you're going to reach your arms forward as you bring your forehead down to the mat. And again, if coming down to the mat doesn't feel accessible, you can always place a block underneath your forehead as well. And then inhale to come back upright. So that's the modified version on one side. And if you're going to stick with the modified version, you would just shift yourself around and move into your lunge on the other side, bringing the left foot forward this time. But for the sake of time, because I want to show you the standing series in its full expression, I'm going to come ahead and do a high lunge. So if you just were doing the standing series all the way through, you would have done the high lunge and warrior two on this side, and then you would have moved into a wide leg forward fold, which I'm about to show you. And then once you came back up from your wide-legged forward fold, you would have just rotated around, coming into a high lunge on this side. So this time your left foot is your front foot. You're stepping that right foot back, coming up onto the ball of the foot. We're making that adjustment where we're lifting the hip bone up towards the rib, engaging the abs and stretching that hip flexor. And then you're going to sink into that front knee a little bit, but trying not to go past your ankle. And again, just like we did when we were down on the mat, you can bring your hands in front of your heart center, or if you like, you can inhale your fingertips up towards the sky, keeping your shoulders nice and relaxed. And then just taking a couple rounds of breath here. And then you're going to inhale, lifting up on the ball of the back foot and coming open into your warrior two, checking in that the back edge of your back foot is parallel to the back of your mat, making sure that that knee isn't collapsing in towards your midline, maybe just guiding it back with your hands. And then we're reaching nice and long through the fingers of opposite hands, but just making sure to keep those shoulders nice and relaxed so we don't create additional muscle tension. And then the last bit of this is as you sink into that front knee, you're going to gaze out over the fingers of your front hand. This time it's your left hand. Taking some nice slow breaths to keep our heart rate down. And then on your next inhale, you're going to just stretch a little bit further, and then exhale your hands to your hips, flipping your feet so that the toes are both pointing forward. Now we're going to move here into the wide-legged forward fold. So you can either keep your feet like this, or you can pigeon toe them a little bit so that they're kind of diagonally pointing in towards the center of the mat. And now you're going to shift your hips back just like you do with a regular forward fold. Make sure you have a little bend of your knees and then just start to drop forward. You ultimately want your hands and the top of your head hanging towards your mat. For some people, that may mean coming all the way down to the ground, and for others, it might mean just hanging. Either way is fine. You just want to avoid straining yourself to reach the mat if that's not accessible. And again, this is where the block can come in handy, because if you can't make it all the way down, you can always place your hands on the block if you feel like you need something to touch. So let's go ahead and take one more inhale and then exhale all the way down. On your next inhale, bend your knees nice and deep and gently roll up to standing. Now from here, we're going to move into a squat, which you can, if you're doing the modification and the squat just does not feel right for you today, you can skip it completely. Or if you are coming up from your child's pose, you can just kind of, come up on your toes and work your way into it. But I'm going to show coming from standing because that's the way I prefer to get into it. It feels most comfortable, but you can approach this in whatever way works for you. So if you're coming from standing from that wide-legged forward fold, you just heel toe your feet in a little bit. And then you bring your hands to heart center on an inhale. And then on your exhale, you want to lower down. And I forgot to mention that the feet should be pointed diagonal. So you're just lowering down as far as feels comfortable. When I first started doing this, I think maybe this was about as far as I could go, and that's totally fine. Ultimately, you want to have your tailbone dropping down towards the mat and your elbows on the insides of your knees, pressing the knees away from each other. So you're going to be pressing your hands, palms of your hands together, and that'll give you some extra oomph, I guess, to really press into those knees away from each other, getting a nice stretch through the inner thighs. Now, like I said, if you can only get to here and you can hold it like that, that's fine. Or you can also grab a block. You can stick it under you this way, this way, this way, whatever works. So if you are pretty high up, you can kind of come like this and sit on it, or you can flip it around and come a little further down. You'll still get the benefits if you're supporting yourself. You may not be building up the leg strength quite as much, but you can still get the benefit of pushing your palms together and getting that stretch through the thighs as you work up to maybe being able to hold it without the block. And so it's always good to have our blocks nearby to help us. For me, being tall, I actually need them for a lot of my standing poses because it just brings the floor a little closer to me without me having to strain. It also can help you maintain proper alignment. So it's always good to have them nearby and use them liberally because they're there to help you. I think some people worry that they look like they're not as strong or limber if they're using them. But really, the ultimate goal is we want to do what's best for our body, not worrying about how it may look to other people. So I'm a big advocate for having your props nearby. So from here, we're going to move on to crow. If you are feeling like that's something you want to try. So how I like to come into crow is actually from squat pose because you're kind of halfway there already. So you would remove your block if you're using it. And I would then probably grab a blanket or a bolster. It's nice to have a little something in front of you just in case you do fall forward. I think it gives you a little more confidence to actually attempt it, knowing that there's something soft in front of you. So I would come directly from where I am into crow if I was in the studio, but so that I can show you what it looks like from the side, which I think is an easier way to demonstrate it. I'm going to go ahead and pull my blanket to the front of my mat this time. So you just want it a little ways in front of you. And then thinking about coming from your squat pose, you're going to put your hands a little bit forward of where your body is. And you want to think about spreading your fingers nice and wide and then really grounding down through the knuckles and almost suctioning the hands to give you a really nice firm foundation. And then on your inhale, you can think about kind of lifting your bum in the air as you hug your knees into your tricep area. And now from here, all we're really doing is leaning forward. And you may only get this far, and that's totally fine. You're still going to be building up some strength here, even if you're not ready to lift your feet off the ground. And that can be a good way to start learning how to get into this pose and working your way up to it. But really all you need to do once you get into your proper alignment is start to lean forward. And you might just start, like I said here, with both feet on the ground. You might experiment with lifting one toe at a time. And then at whatever point you're ready, you just keep leaning forward until your feet come completely off the ground. So why don't we go ahead and try that? Do it to whatever your comfort level is. You can hold it for as long or short a period as you like. So once again, just as a refresher, you're spreading the fingers of both hands nice and wide, really grounding them down to give you a nice firm foundation, lifting your bum and hips into the air, hugging your knees into your triceps, and leaning forward. And then at whatever point you're ready to lower down, you just rock back onto your toes, and that's it. So that is all for our standing series today. I just wanted to say one final word about crow, or what we can also call that an arm balance. It's in the arm balance category. Now, I know a lot of people who come to yoga may feel kind of intimidated by the balance poses, and that's totally understandable. And they are not something that you're going to necessarily be able to get into immediately. It's something that you work your way up towards. And I think if you can approach it with a sense of fun and playfulness, it makes it less intimidating. And also knowing that the purpose of them is really not to look cool or look like you're doing, a fancy pose. It really is strength building. But where I find it really, really valuable as well is it can actually be really nice for calming and quieting the mind. Because if you think about, or if you've ever tried a balance pose, it's very hard to really think about something else when you're focused on maintaining your balance. And so I find them to be really helpful if you are feeling very scattered, overwhelmed, anxious, nervous, because it really does kind of center and focus your energy, especially another trick for the balance poses is finding a point or a drishti to focus on. And that really just kind of narrows your focus and you're really connected into your body as you're trying to keep your balance. So I highly recommend finding one that feels accessible to you. I will demonstrate some more in future videos, but there's plenty out there to try, and they can all be really helpful if you're looking to just calm yourself and ground your energy. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please post them below and let me know too if there's anything else that you would like me to demonstrate or talk about. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.